What Earth was like 250 million years ago. Have you ever wondered what the Earth was like before humans? Well, this is a tough question to answer, as the Earth doesn't like to stay the same for very long. Throughout its 4.54 billion year history, it has seen many extremely different realities than the one we know today. However, there was a brief period when the Earth was truly unique, even for its own standards. A time when it was home to some of the most bizarre and fascinating creatures that have ever walked the planet. This is the story of Earth, as it was 250 million years ago. In this video, we'll retrace the steps of our planet's incredible journey and find out what life was like in this distant and mysterious era. The supercontinent Pangaea. The world was in the early Triassic phase of the Mesozoic era, which had recently replaced the Paleozoic era. During this time, the Earth was almost unrecognizable compared to what we know today on any map. This was due to the existence of a massive supercontinent called Pangaea, which covered about one-third of the Earth's total surface and over 95% of its landmass. The remaining land was occupied by small continental islands to the east, consisting of what is now present-day North China and South China. The minor Amurian tectonic plate was also separated from Pangaea and was made up of Korea, parts of Japan, and northeastern China. These islands were surrounded by the Paleotethys Sea, which contained warm waters as the equator ran right through it for its entire width. And at the east of the sea, the largest body of water to ever exist in the history of our planet could be found, the Panthalessic Superocean, which means all sea in Greek. This colossal sea is estimated to have been at least 1,860 miles or 3,000 kilometers longer than the current Pacific Ocean at its widest point, covering over 60% of prehistoric Earth. Now, let's talk about the climate and its impact. Despite the enormous proportions of the land masses and bodies of water, the Earth's climate during this era was quite extreme and erratic. Some paleontologists even think that the temperatures during the early Triassic may have ranged from 120 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit or 49 to 60 degrees Celsius during the summer. This extreme heat was especially felt in the center of Pangaea, where it was typically arid and rainless due to large mountain ranges blocking clouds and preventing any precipitation. Because of this unrelenting heat, large parts of Pangaea were made up of vast deserts where life was almost impossible and only small creatures could survive. But it wasn't just extreme heat that defined this era, as the nights in these mega deserts were equally brutal, with low humidity and vegetation coverage leading to freezing temperatures. This wasteland-like nature of the early Triassic was largely a result of the fact that less than 2 million years before, the world had experienced the worst mass extinction in history, the Permian Triassic extinction event. This catastrophic event, also known as the Great Dying, is believed to have been caused by massive volcanic eruptions originating from the Siberian traps. These eruptions released an unprecedented amount of volcanic carbon dioxide, which led to a scalding Earth and catastrophic changes in the environment. This Armageddon wiped out over 90% of all species, including more than 95% of marine species and 70% of terrestrial species. The impact of this mass extinction was so significant that it changed the course of Earth's history and left a lasting impact on the early Triassic period. But what about the survivors and rulers from the Permian? Even after this complete mass destruction of life, there were a few survivors who managed to make a comeback in the early Triassic period. These survivors were mainly found towards the poles, where the temperatures were milder and more conducive to life. Interestingly, one may assume to find dinosaurs during this time, as it is known as the Age of Dinosaurs. However, they would not appear until 7 million years later. Instead, the most abundant creature found in Pangaea was the Lystrosaurus. This herbivorous diodon had successfully managed to survive the Permian extinction and quickly became the most populous animal on Earth during this period. In certain regions, it was estimated that the Lystrosaurus population accounted for up to 95% of all animals. The exact reason for their survival is still a mystery, But scientists believe that their ability to adapt and thrive in harsh conditions played a crucial role. Apart from the Listosaurus, there were other survivors as well. One of them was the Theracephalians, a group of non-mammalian synapsids that were found in Eurasia, Africa, and even Antarctica. These apex predators had overthrown the previous rulers of the Permian era, the Gorgonopsids. However, their population were severely depleted due to the volcanic eruptions, and they no longer held their dominant position in the food chain. The largest and most well-known species of Theracephalians to survive was the Moschops, which could reach up to 1.5 meters in length and had a cat-like body structure, suggesting that it may have hunted like modern-day large cats. It probably preyed on the Lysosaurus and another group of survivors, the non-mammalian cynodonts, which included early mammal relatives like Thrinaoxodon and Cynognathus. But, surprise, there were new rulers of Pangaea. The Moschops rhinus was no longer the ruler of Pangaea. That title instead went to a new group of animals known as Archosauriforms. These crocodile-like creatures possessed sprawling gaits and long hooked snouts, which made them formidable hunters. The first of their kind to emerge was the Protosaurus, a slim and long-bodied reptile that could reach up to 4 meters or 13 feet in length. While it was initially believed to be semi-aquatic and hunted similar to modern-day crocodilians, recent evidence suggests that it was a terrestrial hunter, adapted to survive in arid environments. No matter what its hunting style was, there is no doubt that the Proterosaurus was an apex predator of its time, feeding on smaller animals like Eotinocosuchus and Procolophon. While this ferocious predator may have also hunted the herbivorous Listosaurus, it was not the largest predator on land. The title of the largest land predator at that time went to the Arctosuchids, a family of unusually large and robust archosauromorphs. What made them even more fearsome was their disproportionate giant heads, closely resembling those seen in later megathropids like Tyrannosaurus. These creatures could be found across Russia, China, India, and South Africa, with the most terrifying members being the Arctosuchus at 5 meters or 16.4 feet long and weighing over 2 tons. It was not only the largest member of its family, but also the biggest land carnivore during the early Triassic period. Its massive skull alone accounted for 20% of its total length and was equipped with sharp conical teeth designed to grip and tear its prey. With a strong bite and an intensely muscled neck, the Arctosuchus was without a doubt the undisputed king of Pangaea during its time, and a formidable predator to encounter in the vast and arid landscape. However, the dry environment was still subject to mega monsoons and contained oases of Arcadia. Life was, without question, very harsh in Pangaea, and the occasional drought only brought more misery. But relief did come for life in the form of mega monsoons, where a shift in winds would bring rainy seasons. However, these monsoons were not like the ones we see today. Due to Pangaea's massive size, they became supercharged and brought heavy seasonal rain. While these wet seasons were a boon for life in the vast and arid landscape, they also created distinct dry seasons, exacerbating the already harsh conditions of Earth. The differentiation between these wet and dry periods during the winter would have been stark and had profound impacts on all life forms. Despite this, there were remarkably lush areas of Pangaea that were revealed by certain fossil sites. The best example comes from the Arcadia Formation, which is located in modern-day Australia. Even though the world was experiencing almost apocalyptic conditions, rivers and lakes dotted the Arcadia landscape, creating flourishing habitats. The fauna in this region was similar to others, with various archosauriforms reigning supreme. In particular, the Erythrosaurus and Cynodonts were prevalent. However, in these vibrant oases, amphibians are the most common animals, accounting for 90% of all species found in the Arcadia Formation. The majority of these amphibians belong to an ancient order known as temnospondyls, which were primitive, semi-aquatic creatures. Although there are gigantic members of this group, the ones found in the early Triassic and Arcadia Formation seem to have only been small to medium-sized, with the largest being about the size of a modern Tulu lizard. Speaking of lizards, let's mention the terrifying creepy crawlies around at that time. But these moist and lush areas were not just the home of big and medium-sized creatures. They were also the ideal environment for fear-inducing creepy crawlies that roamed the Pangaean that we might even recognize today, including spiders, worms, millipedes, grasshoppers, centipedes, beetles, flies, and mites, to name a few. The forests of these lands were also more vibrant and healthy compared to other parts of the world. However, they looked quite similar because in those days, there were not many types of trees around due to the Permian extinction. The most common plant species during this time were peltospermales, a group of seed ferns that were relatively small in size, with the tallest species reaching only 2 meters or 6.6 feet tall. These plants were found all over the globe and were the key food source for many herbivorous reptiles at the time. Other types of flora, although in smaller numbers, also coexisted with peltospermals, including ferns, conifers, cichlids, and bennettitales. But what about the ocean? There existed a devastated superocean and some apex predator sharks. Despite the miserable state of the forest during this time, they were still better off than aquatic life, which had been greatly affected by the Permian extinction. Similar to the land, the waters were also extremely hot, with tropical temperatures reaching 40 degrees Celsius or 104 degrees Fahrenheit, and experiencing frequent fluctuations. This harsh environment made it difficult for life to thrive in the once mighty superocean of Panthalasia. However, despite these challenges, new forms of marine life continued to emerge and adapt to the changing conditions. The most remarkable among these new creatures were the marine reptiles known as the Ichthyopterygia. These reptiles were the ancestors of the well-known Ichthyosaurus and were typically small, measuring around 1 meter or 3.3 feet in length. They were believed to have a sleek, eel-like swimming style and were commonly found along the coastlines of northern Pangaea. One of the most prevalent genera at the time was Gripio, which is thought to have been a carnivorous or possibly omnivorous creature. Alongside the Ichthyopterygia, another group of marine reptiles called Sauropterygians also emerged in Panthalasia. These primitive reptiles would eventually give rise to the iconic Plesiosaurus, but during this time they were relatively small in size. They were characterized by the Plecidus, a narrow-bodied reptile about the length of a ruler that likely fed on fish. These creatures inhabited the vast microbial reefs that dominated the superocean at the time and were joined by familiar fish groups such as ray-finned and bony fish. These fish had widespread ranges, meaning they could be found in various habitats around the world. The conchs, a group of fish that experienced a surge in diversity during this time, also flourished and even developed new modes of life, such as the fork-tailed rebelectric sharks. While apex predator sharks still existed during this time, they were not as abundant as before the extinction event. The survivors, such as Hybodontiforms and Eugenodontida, were relatively small, measuring less than 5 feet in length. Similar to other fish, they had diverse diets and could thrive in various habitats, including freshwater rivers. This meant that land-dwelling animals not only had to endure extreme temperatures and natural disasters, but also had to contend with fierce predators in the water. Let's jump now to 30 million years later. However, thankfully for all living beings, the world as it was 250 million years ago did not last forever. Around 30 million years later, the Earth's chaotic climate began to stabilize, and life slowly started to recover. This period was known as the Triassic-Jurassic transition, and it marked the beginning of a new era for life on Earth. So, what do you think about the current state of the Earth? Do you think that we will face another mass extinction event in the future? Or will we be able to adapt and thrive despite the challenges that we face? Well, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We really hope this video has given you a glimpse into our planet's rich and dynamic history and has sparked your curiosity to learn more about the incredible creatures that inhabited it millions of years ago. If you find it interesting, please make sure to hit that like, share, and subscribe button so that you can never miss out on any of our future videos.